So now I'm trying to setting up the router 1, and the same goes for the router number 2, and the same goes for router number 3. And as we can see here in the ipconfig command, they are assigned a static IP address to each of the interface. Something went wrong with my DNS service, so I was trying to turn it on by executing these commands. So here is my 3 PCs, with each has been assigned a IP address, which is here, and here. And also the default DHCP server. So this is my 3 routers, and with each of them has 4 interfaces and 4 different MAC addresses. For example, the router number 1, this port connects to our DHCP server, and this interface connects to PC1, which is a dedicated connection. And these two are under under 2 different subnetworks, which are connected to these 2 routers. So they are actually connecting to each other, forming a subnetwork. Forming 3 subnetworks. So now I'm gonna ping my PC2 and PC3 from my PC1, and I'm gonna input the IP address of PC2, and I'm gonna ping it. Okay, it succeeded, and I'm gonna input the IP address of PC3. It also works. So I've created a V5OS, and I'm gonna clone it 3 times to generate our 3 routers, and I'm gonna name these 3 routers to V5OS R1, R2, and R3. And so I'm not gonna show how I configure my router in ViVOS. And this is my first time logging into my router 3 under ViVOS. So the first thing I'm gonna do is show configuration, and it will tell me that my router has 5 interfaces, and I'm gonna associate each of the interfaces with my network adapter here, and by looking at their MAC addresses. So let's say the Ethernet ETH1, it has the MAC address ending in 58, and which in this case it's my adapter 2, and it should be connected to the internal network 3, which is the dedicated connection to my PC3. In order to doing that, we'll have to first get into configure mode, and then add these 2 lines. The first one is just specifies the ETH4 to be connected to our DHCP server, and the second one is just to add a description, and this is not necessary. So now I've got my three routers to be able to connect to the internet. And so that, yeah, the next step I'm going to do is to configure the networks in between them so that they can ping to each other. So I'm gonna manually configure the IP address like this. So now I've already done the configuration of these three routers, and they are on the ports that will be connected to each other. So here we can see, by looking at the ATH2 interface, a static IP address has already been signed to it, and with the subnetwork mask /24.
Okay, so now here I've set up a new PC1 with no Quagga installed, and I've also disabled the I've disabled the adapter one, which was supposed to be connected to the NAT and DHCP server from the VirtualBox. So now it only has one adapter 2, which will be connected to the router 1. Okay, so I didn't assign any IP address to it. So here the ATH1 is the ports that connects to the virtual DNS and virtual DHCP of VirtualBox. So it's connected to the internet. So now my PC is able to ping the outside world. So by adding up these 5 rules on the 3 routers, I'll now be able to route the traffic inside out and outside in. So we basically get rid of the firewall, and as long as you know the exact IP address of the other PC, you can ping.
So now I'm gonna demonstrate how my PC can ping to the other PC as long as you know the IP address of that PC. So as you can see here, in my PC1, it got only one IP address that was assigned by the DHCP server installed on the router 1, and I'm gonna ping the .2.2, which is the IP address of my PC2. So this is my PC2 with the IP address 192.168.2.2, and it can ping to PC1. So the client is running on terminal 1, and the server is running on terminal 2, and I'm gonna show you how we can actually, okay, so I'm gonna start the server first, and once it's started, it keeps listening from the client. Okay, so I'm gonna turn on the server and send the message that I want to send. Okay, I'm gonna enter my message, and it says I got your message, and we back to the server, and it says okay, I've received that message, and that is how it basically works.